to your knees. Sometimes you take in someone else's toxin, thinking it's the oxygen you need. You feel spinning off this carousel. From your mistakes, you learn these lessons well. Just keep holding tighter to your heart's desire, and everyone else fond farewell. For everyone who waits till someone can bear, put back all the pieces and brings up despair. For everyone who hates till someone's love is true, I promise to remain forever and a day. I'll be there for you. For everyone who leaves, till someone found to stay, bring them toward the light and try to keep them close at bay. For everyone who finds till someone loves you, when you just meet their gaze, you find yourself amazed. When I keep my promise made, forever and a day, I'll be there for you.
Some fair and balanced folks seem to be under the impression that if they just lie hard enough, reality will change to accommodate them, and nobody will notice all the fibs they told. Friends, we may need to borrow a high-speed camera to catch all the confabulations in this one. Welcome to Factual, a bonus show that pops up from time to time when I have both the availability and just regular ability to do one, where we talk about the realities of trans and intersex people, like me. If you're new here, my name is Ember, and I'm an intersex woman of transgender experience and a dispeller of disinformation, among other things. You should subscribe now. Before we begin, I'd like to offer a gentle reminder that this is a live broadcast. While I do my best to clean up all the lies we come across during these shows, today we're dealing with elephant-sized piles, you might say. We'll be meeting a man who worked for many years for Fox News, so he's pretty adept at how to spin half-truths and slip in fiction so that the average person won't notice. The propaganda is not subtle. He wears his agenda right on his sleeve, but there's going to be a lot of it. Elephants, remember. Lots of it. If you're ready to see a grown wasp man wet the bed about how terrifying minority girls are, stay tuned. Today's subject is Ken LaCorte, former staffer at Fox News. He's put together one of the most propagandistic presentations I've come across this year, filled with all manner of weasel words, victim blaming, double standards, and every other dishonest trick you can think of to avoid telling a direct lie. But he still traps himself into a few of those here and there. See if you can spot them. Play along at home. Again, live show. I am going to miss stuff, misspeak, and may even breeze past complicated subjects that deserve an hour or more of time just to elaborate on in their own right. I'm a human, and we have limited time. Subscribe if you haven't. Let's hit it.
In just 10 years, we've seen one of the fastest social changes in American history. Among young people calling themselves
That is Jamie Raines, or Jamie Dodger, here on the YouTubes. He has a PhD in, I believe it's gender studies. So, yeah.
Transgender, it exploded from barely measurable numbers to 3%, with another
What is barely measurable? Exploded from barely measurable to 3%. What do you mean by that? Is 3% supposed to be a giant number? But also, citation needed. Now, you're going to notice this a lot in this video. There's a lot of things just said that apparently come from thin air. Obviously, this is a right-wing tactic, although it's not exclusive to the right, to be fair. Just declaring things is kind of their MO, however.
2% who aren't sure. That's millions of young people. But this
it's millions of people, period.
Isn't just about numbers. It's about how a movement gained unprecedented power quickly.
Power. Unprecedented power. We're in the first few seconds of this man's video, and he's framing this picture that he wants to paint as if trans people have unprecedented power. In the year of Our Lady 2026, it's not the president, it's not Congress, it's not even the Supreme Court. It's the High Council of Transgender People who have all the power in our society. Obviously. Can't you tell by all the laws that are coming into effect that elevate trans people above everyone else? But also, the imagery being used, the photo being painted, if you will, is of a pride event, which includes trans people, but isn't just trans people. The whole LGBT is not just trans people, but that's a conflation that people on the right really seem to like making. Because if you can pretend that the transgender threat is also the same thing as the whole LGBT, then you can also push back on gay rights when you come after trans people.
It reshaped America from medical practice to language, even how society
It reshaped America. Oh my.
views basic concepts like gender. The
Wow, my goodness. My goodness. We're gesturing at broad declarations. What does any of this mean, though? It reshaped language. Okay, the AP issued a style guide for transgender coverage. They issue a style guide for race coverage. They issue a style guide for police coverage. Like, what do you mean? They're recognizing that transgender people exist? Oh, no!
elephant in the room is how this movement gained so much power so quickly. And
so much power. That's why we have to have protests like those pictured here. Because, you know, the group that's in charge is always the one protesting.
Why it's now heading downhill.
Ah, there it is. They gained so much power so fast, but now it's on the way down. Did we get deleted, folks? We're going to find out.
I'm Ken LaCorte. I dig into uncomfortable topics and give you as fair and straightforward answers as I can.
Which, as it turns out, is not very fair and extremely not straightforward. Although he does add the caveat, the qualifier at the end, if you will, as I can. Maybe this is the best he can do. Or he means fair in the Fox News kind of way, which is to say, not.
Especially when they challenge the mainstream narrative.
It's interesting. We've known for a long time, the alt-right, the conservative griftophiles, they love to say mainstream media, even though they themselves are the mainstream media, especially now that they own all the basic broadcast channels.
In the next few minutes, we'll look at the movement's dramatic rise, especially among females. How a perfect
the dramatic rise. We have to put the word dramatic in there or you won't understand how dramatic it is. But also, look out for your kids. They might live past puberty.
storm of forces created that rise, and how activists went too far and why
Ah, yes, the activists, they went too far. We almost achieved, tolerance. We were almost allowed to exist in society. So close. Oh, it's just too far. Now, a game I often like to play with these particular kinds of propagandists is to, in your mind, whenever they try to apply a principle to trans people, switch it to a different group. For example, in this case, a lot of the right wing talking points could be applied to gay people or to Black people or any other group of people. So if you just in your mind think about, let's say, Black people, because there was a similar bathroom segregation issue back in the day. Some people are moving to make it an issue again, but that's neither here nor there. So every time he says the trans people went too far, think about him saying the Black people went too far by insisting on access to bathrooms. Heavens.
2024 became its turning point.
Oh, there's another turning point. That's interesting because I seem to recall Time Magazine published a cover image issue, title story, whatever the hell, called The Transgender Tipping Point, which you might call a turning point, but maybe he's trying to invoke the memory of Charlie Kirk here by saying turning point. Who's to say? With this kind of propagandistic rhetoric, it could be a general gesture at a thing, or it could just be a coincidence, and it's really hard to tell which.
Historically, transgenders were a tiny fraction of the population.
Transgenders. Fair perspective, though. We're keeping it shooting straight, folks, with the language choice.
Population. In fact, before 2010, most medical literature estimated that gender dysphoria affected
the imagery of Caitlyn Jenner, amazing, but also most medical literature. What does that mean? Can you, again, no citation. We're just saying things. Most medical literature, such as .404, not found. Now, that's not to say there is no medical literature that says that. In point of fact, I'm fairly sure there is at least one thing, because I've read Janice Raymond's book where she lays out these numbers. I've also read Abigail Schreier's book where she also makes a similar claim. But citation needed.
About 1 in 10,000 biological males, and even fewer females. These numbers held steady for decades. And
now it's worth noting, gender dysphoria is a diagnostic, right? It is something you are diagnosed with. So first of all, the term didn't exist for decades and decades, and you can't diagnose someone with a term that doesn't exist. We used different terms back in the day. The numbers were different, and who they chose to even see was a very, very limited sample size. So there's not actually any data from which to draw this information. The second thing is that, no, confusing people receiving the diagnosis with the number of people whom the diagnosis could correctly be applied to is not the same thing, which is why we need to see studies so we can check out sample sizes and how it generalizes to the whole population and so on and so forth. But no, we're just going to declare things. It's fine. My goodness. Deconstructing Laura says, hello, Ember. What is the preferred verbiage, please? Trans people is what I've been saying. Trans people is fair. It's, we're people who happen to be trans. You could even drop the trans and just say people. But if you want to, specifically talk about trans people, I can see how it would increase clarity to say trans people. But yeah, that's fine. That works. It's trying to nounify or verbify or even adjectivify the word transgender, like saying the transes or the transgenders. That's sloppy language at best and indicates a far right, not exactly apologist, but at least a person who regurgitates what the apologists have to say. What they used to call ditto heads before Rush Limbaugh went to meet his fate.
Medical and psychological transitions were viewed as last resort.
What is a psychological transition? What does he mean? Medical and psychological transitions are viewed as last resorts. What period are we talking about here? Now, it's true that under the Harry Benjamin protocols, a person was only allowed a medical transition if everything else failed. And even then, it was still only permitted if the doctor believed that the person could pass. If you had no chance of passing, in their opinion, it didn't matter that nothing else worked. No transition for you. But what the hell does he mean by psychological transitions? He's putting out this picture that's like people are just grabbing transitions all willy-nilly, when that's not the case. The fact that it was more restrictive in the past isn't a good thing.
Then the numbers.
What the hell is this? Okay, so we've got a graph here, and it says number or percent transgender. And along the side, we've got 0 all the way at the bottom, and it goes all the way up to 3.2, which I guess is a percent of what? Who knows? But running along the x-axis, we've got years starting in 2014 and running through 2023. And then we've got the different colored lines represent age groups. The yellow line all the way at the bottom is 65 plus. Okay. Then the next line down is 55 to 64. The next line down is 45 to 54. The next line down, this magenta one, is 35 to 44. And then, you know, another decade back, 25 to 34. And then we jump back. It's not even a decade group. It's 18 to 24, but okay. Cool. All adults. Fantastic. And we see in 2020 a sudden uptick. Let's see. It looks like it goes from 1.5% to 2.6%. Oh, goodness. It's almost like a whole percentage of people, 1% of the population, during the lockdown, had time to figure out who they are or something. How terrible.
Just exploded. But it wasn't just those numbers.
It exploded to 3%.
Numbers that changed. It was the very nature of who identified as transgender. Historically, the vast.
Why is there only a Venus symbol? Interesting. So who, the owl might say, identifies as transgender? And what does that mean?
The vast majority of transgenders were biological males going to female.
So this is another thing in Abigail Schreier's book, but Ken doesn't actually source and is based on apparently nothing. This idea that historically, virtually all trans people were male. However, in the newspaper records that we have of trans people, the only record we can look at historically to show trans people for the past 100 years or so, most of them are trans men, meaning they were assigned female at birth. So there's that. Goodness.
And now that pattern has completely reversed.
I love how every image pinned to this corkboard is the Caitlyn Jenner and Laverne Cox image, except Elliot Page here.
There are more women seeking to become men, and among
women seeking to become men. Again, I understand that the idea of sex change type stuff is very confusing to baby boomers, late Gen Xers. I don't know exactly how old Ken is, but somewhere in that group, because they were raised in a world with Christine Jorgensen, where they heard trans people referred to as sex changes. And they haven't quite picked up on the fact that you don't actually have to go through all the surgeries and procedures to be a trans person. It's very strange.
teens, biological females dominate the numbers. This is
Now that is how I know this is from Abigail Schreier. Again, no citation, but this is a thing that Schreier opens her book with. For anybody who isn't familiar, she wrote the book called Irreversible Damage, based on a retracted study, shall we say, if I want to be nice about it. It's a retracted study, which had huge methodological flaws. And she opens her book by presenting this data that trans people used to be all men and now it's all women. And it's women who are being heard and yada yada. Oh my goodness. If I had a nickel for every trans man I knew who got pregnant because he and his partner wanted to have a baby, yes, there are people getting the surgeries, but the vast majority, even who have lower surgery, aren't removing the reproductive equipment. So this idea that it's sterilizing a whole generation of trans people is just not true. My goodness. You know, it is true. Lil Trade sent us a super chat, $5. Thank you, Lil. And Lil says, Ember chat, hell yeah. We do have a bonus objective today. We're trying for 10 super chats. And if we get it, then we're gonna do a Let's Chat stream this week, which is, you know, a very low-key hangout, talk about stuff type stream. Specifically with the chat. It's a Let's Chat with the chat kind of thing. So, you know. Oh, goodness. It's also worth noting, Sapphire Light says some of us don't even want surgery. And that's true. But also, very important, the vast majority of gender-affirming surgeries are done on cis people. They're for cis people for the same reason. I'm sure we'll get to some more of that in a little bit.
isn't just in America. Similar patterns emerged across the entire Western world, especially in countries with strong social media usage.
Oh, the social media. Oh, heavens. It's got to be the social medias because it happened over the 2020 or something. But like the graph he showed is 18 to the peak amount is 18 to 24. And he's making the case that it's all kids who are being affected. Okay.
Sweden saw 1,500.
Sweden saw, okay, what do we have here? Number of cases, 0. So 2008, we're starting with, let's call it 100. It's probably less, but let's call it that. On the y-axis here, we've got 500, 1,000, and 1,500 at the tippy top. And we go from 2008 to 2018. So we've got a 10-year span. So we're going to go from something like 100 to 1,500. Okay. With you so far.
100% in teen girls trying to get medical treatments for transgender.
Okay, no. Again, no citation, just a thing being stated. There's a few different Sweden things that he could be referring to here, but without a citation, I can't tell which. That said, the number of people inquiring at a gender clinic, it depends on how you're recording the information, right? Because we've seen something similar in the past. In fact, with a Sweden study, one of the famous things that people may mean when they say Sweden study is a study having to do with children who went to a gender identity clinic, sometimes just to get birth control. And they recorded all the numbers of all the kids who went there. And then they recorded all the numbers of all the kids who ended up going on HRT. And they called those people trans, and everybody else, even the cis kids who were only there for birth control, they called them desisters. They were never trans in the first place. What do you mean? Goodness. One thing that we can tell for sure is that Sapphire Zombie Goliath Light sent us a super chat for $5. Thank you, Sapphire. And it's all pride stuff. It's pride flags and trans flags and hearts in various prideful colors. And on that note, I am going to show you guys a neat thing. Speaking of pride, as you might say. In 2024, NASA researcher Rachel Lenz gave the world a flag made from NASA images for Pride Month. On January 20th, 2025, the incoming U.S. administration ordered that Artistic Union of Science and Civil Rights deleted. So I tracked down the original images it was made from, recreated it, and then added even more wonders of the cosmos to update the flag to the current, more inclusive form. On the anniversary of the inauguration, I released it. And it went viral several times. Now you can get a physical copy of that artwork as a full-sized flag or a large sticker, as well as space artworks of the other pride flags: lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, intersex, ace, and new flags being added all the time. Get one for yourself or give them as gifts and celebrate pride, celebrate science, celebrate resistance, and help support a creator fighting for human rights for all humans. Head to astralpride.com. Oh, right. I don't normally drop ads in the middle of these streams, but like it fits. And also that's my stuff. It's not like a random sponsor or whatever. Okay. Antjer asks, was there a Swedish study where they only consulted the parents of trans kids? Not that I'm aware of. There is a study where they only consulted the anti-trans parents of trans kids. And that is what Lisa Littman's retracted study was about. And that's the reason it was retracted, because she specifically sought out only the anti-trans parents of trans kids. She did not talk to the kids. She did not talk to the broader group of parents who are a mixture of accepting or rejecting. She specifically sought out parents who were members of social media organizations like trans critical professionals, something, I forget the names of the various organizations, but they're all social media type things, like Facebook groups. And that's why it was retracted, because it was a very intentionally biased study that didn't even measure the thing it was purporting to measure. Lots of flaws. And Abigail Schreier, her entire book is based on that flawed study. Amazing. All right, so speaking of this study, it says, I realize the overlay may be in the way for some people. In fact, I'll take the overlay off to make sure we don't accidentally cover the screen here. It says the increase in diagnosed gender dysphoria cases among teens in Sweden. So again, before we were talking about 18 to 24-year-olds, now we're suddenly talking about teens, and specifically in Sweden from 2008 to 2018. No citation, but also it's an increase in diagnoses. Does that mean, and again, this is before 2020 and the social media contagion. So does that mean this isn't because of social media and that it's a legitimate thing? Because it doesn't mean more people are trans. It means more trans people are receiving a diagnosis. That's a very different situation.
And in the UK, referrals to gender clinics rose 4,400% over a decade.
Okay, referrals to gender clinics rose 4,400% over a decade. Again, no citation, but also, why percents? With the other graphs, we were talking, well, the last graph, the Sweden thing, we were talking about total number of cases. Why is it a percent now? Because when you start with very, very small numbers, it's really easy to get a very, very big increase. For example, over a decade, which decade? Are we talking about the decade when the very first gender clinic opened in the UK? We went from 1 referral to 44, because that's a 4,400% increase. You see what I mean about how small numbers get magnified easily? So what do we mean? Why are we speaking using terms that sound impressive but make it super easy to hide factual information?
A fundamental debate is why. Were these transgenders always there, but
Oh, these transgenders, were they always there, but finally free to be
finally
themselves?
free to be themselves? Or was there something else going on driving this growth?
Oh, okay. So the trans people have all the power, right? Like that's the premise of this thing. Trans people are in charge of everything. But also, trans people are the victims of some nefarious they operating behind the scenes that's driving this madness. Which is it, Ken? Is it a conspiracy or have we taken over the world? Like, what's going on? My goodness. Lil of all trades sends us a super chat for $5. Thank you, Lil. And Lil says, go buy a flag sticker, $1 off with promo code Lil. And that's true. At Astral Pride, there are also stickers. The full-size flags, they're honestly a very good price. I've seen other people like run with Rachel Lenz's original design, which incidentally is illegal, but never mind. They're printing off versions of that for much more than we're able to do. And this is my art made from real space images, not stolen from someone else's Blue Sky or Twitter or whatever. Anyway, there's also stickers, and they're pretty big stickers. They're like 5 inches across, and you get $1 off with promo code Lil. So, you know, something to keep in mind. And hello, everybody who's joining us. It's lovely to see you all. We're trying to get through this relatively short video, but Brandolini's law is in effect like exponentially, because our subject today, he isn't just saying bullshit 10 times faster than is required to debunk it. He's saying layered bullshit. He's bullshittedly waving at another layer of bullshit. Holy crap. It's intense, you might say. Deconstructing Laura says, this reminds me of the autism immunization debate. It's not that the numbers increased, it's that the diagnosis, that word, increased. Yes. There's so many things like this. It's like, oh, we put something into the population that increased the amount of diabetes, when in actuality, it's better testing that's helping us catch diabetes earlier so people can be healthier. But you know, crime only exists when there's police officers.
Transformation, especially among young people, it didn't happen by accident. It was a perfect storm of forces that came together. It started with the success of the gay rights movement.
It started with the success of the gay rights movement. All right. No, trans people have been around for hundreds of years before that, in legal records and news reports and all sorts of things, but that's neither here nor there. It's a good point that trans people did start the gay rights movement. Whether you want to talk about Compton's Cafeteria or the Stonewall Uprising, it was trans people who started the movement. So yes, the whole gay rights movement because of trans people. So yeah, not the point he intended to make, but he accidentally made it.
After winning the battle for marriage and legal equality, many of these same activists and organizations shifted their focus to transgender rights.
Now this is one of those DARVO things, which is deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. We see it in abuse situations and in cults, and in conspiracy theories, like the gender critical conspiracy theory. What happened was and we know this because right-wing propaganda organizations said so on their website, when they lost the battle against marriage equality in 2015, they needed a new wedge issue. So they shifted their speakers and resources and whatnot to try to make trans people into a wedge issue. But now, knowing that's what they have done, the first resort of a guilty mind is to project as hard as you can. And so that's what they've done. And we hear it from, Julie Bindel and Helen Joyce and all sorts of other, Heritage Foundation mouthpieces saying, oh, well, it's the the gay activists and all their money, their fortune, because they've always been so rich and powerful, continuing to get paid requires them to continue to have new struggles. And so they started trying to fight for trans rights. The problem with that isn't just that we know they're lying, because we have the receipts from the far-right organizations that they were the ones who decided to switch to trying to hurt trans people. But in 2015, trans people had, broadly speaking, pretty much mostly equal rights. We were dealing with updating our documents and things. Like, more and more states were allowing us to change the marker on our driver's license to accurately reflect what we look like. That was it. That was what was being talked about at the time. So what's the problem?
And with them, they brought proven tactics and an infrastructure for social change.
An infrastructure. Yes, that's why we immediately got every state in the union to pass laws saying you respect trans rights or go to jail. That's totally what happened. Yep.
It also coincided with the anti-bullying movement in America.
Oh no! How un-American. Trying to get people to be nicer to each other. It's an interesting thing that he connects these two, though, because it turns out that the people who are anti-trans are, broadly speaking, also pro-bullying. Weird cell phone, but, you know, you bought it, you paid for it, you own it. Good job, Ken. Yep.
When I was in school in the 70s and 80s, it was all about don't do drugs. In my children's years, it was all about fighting bullies and being...
Oh no, we can't. The poor children, they're being told to fight bullying. The harassment of the poor bullies. Oh no, someone's going to cancel the bullies.
Tolerant to all. First up was the battle over words, because winning the language war was crucial. All activists...
Winning the language war. Interesting. And what he's highlighting up here is it says we recognize the language we use matters to those around us. That's true. This is not a controversial statement, but he's highlighting it. Like, what are we doing here?
Understand that. They know that by controlling the conversation, they can control the debate itself.
No. Have you ever been in a debate, Ken? Is that a thing you've done? You can't. First of all, that's not how language works. And second, no, you can't control the debate by restricting the language. What do you mean?
Transgender world successfully shifted the conversation by redefining words like men and women to center on gender identity.
First of all, he's highlighting different gender-related terms like gender binary, non-binary, agender, bigender, cisgender, etc. Nothing about redefining man and woman. Also, that's been a thing since the feminist movement, like the first feminist movement. Being a woman means you biologically shouldn't be voting. None of these things are connected, but regressives have always made the case they are. If you cast a vote, your uterus will fall out. Oh no!
Not biological sex. Even basic language was rewritten, with terms like ladies and gentlemen being called exclusionary and being swapped out. They replaced clinical sounding terms like
people are being more polite. I'm gonna stomp my feet and cry about it.
Like sex change with gender affirming healthcare.
Well, that's interesting. There's a lot more to gender affirming care than what you might call a sex change, Ken. I don't know how to tell you this, but like, it can involve anything as simple as clothing that suits you better, or a haircut, or the newest trend in masculinizing gender affirming care apparently involves young men hitting themselves in the face with a hammer to break their jawbone so they can reshape them into a more masculine form. Technically, it's gender affirming care because it's affirming their gender.
During the medical reality of surgeries and hormone treatments. I mean, think about it.
Think about it, he says. I wish he would think about it. There's quite a bit of difference between a surgery and hormone treatment, and that's fear-mongering. I don't have the statistic handy. You can find it on my website, betterthanember.com, where I reference all the gender-related studies that I talk about here on this show. A very small percentage of people who ever transition pursue HRT, and an even smaller percentage ever even pursue, let alone gain access to, any kind of surgery. Interestingly enough, there are a lot of people who do get access to hormones and even to surgeries with no questions asked. Cis people. If you are, for example, a man like Ken here, and you are one of the roughly a third of men who develop breasts, a condition that they call gynecomastia, not because there's anything wrong with having breasts. In fact, breasts are quite nice. It's because they feel uncomfortable having them because they identify as men. Those are biological breasts. They're natural. They just grew themselves. Perfectly healthy breast tissue, as Michelle Bailey once put it. And they cut them off because they are uncomfortable. That is by far the most common gender-affirming surgery. And it's just a male doing things to feel more manly. Shrug.
What kind of a decent person would be against gender-affirming care? It sounds great. And the most important factor in reaching young people was the ultimate tool, social media.
The ultimate tool. I won't make the obvious joke. I'm trying really hard not to make the obvious joke about the ultimate tool. But yes, tell us more about how social media, which exploded in popularity in 2020, changed the statistics in Sweden in 2008. Go for it.
The information flow to kids wasn't just parents, teachers, and friends anymore. Social media algorithms created powerful echo chambers which amplified transgender messaging to kids.
No. It made it possible for trans people to become aware that trans people exist and give them the language to express what was always true about them. I have not seen a single transgender echo chamber. Not one. My friend Luxander has tried to build one, and it still doesn't work that way because you can't do that with social media. What you can do, however, is build a conservative echo chamber where, you make conservative talking points and you reference only conservative sources that reference other things that also aren't true from other conservative sources. And you bury the truth so far down under so many not referenced sources that no one can ever find out that you're repeating a lie. But I'm sure that's not what's happening. Yes, that's absolutely what's happening here, and we're going to get to it soon.
Studies show that about half of transgenders cited YouTube videos as influential in their decisions.
What studies? Studies show which studies, and also no. Like, most of what we hear from the right is that it was TikTok stuff. But he's saying YouTube. Why? Where does that come from? And also, he's showing Blair White videos in this mix. Like, there's only one trans person who's more transphobic than Blair White. Like, there she is right there at the bottom. What do you mean?
YouTube videos as influential in their decisions. For young people questioning their identity, these digital spaces became powerful.
There we are. Look at all those YouTube videos on TikTok. And also, most of these people are adults. I don't know all of them. I'm not even familiar with all of them. But this person was earlier in this video.
Influence centers. The social dynamic was especially important among teenage girls and their friendship groups. They place high value on social cohesion and fear rejection.
I wonder if he imagines he's got a we can always tell thing. Because, like, he wants to say that the vast majority of trans people are now assigned female at birth, and his entire page is all trans girls. It's all trans girls. What point do you think you're making here, Ken? You're undermining yourself.
Making them particularly susceptible to what experts call social contagion effects.
What experts call? Who are these experts? You see, I warned you in the beginning about loads of weasel words. This is another one. Experts say is just one step less useless than some people say. Who? On what basis? Who are you calling an expert, Ken? Is it Abigail Schreier? Because she's not an expert. I hate to break it to you.
When one member of a friend group identified as trans, often others followed. Some clinics reported entire...
That's right. It's contagious. That's why everyone is trans now, as the president determined by executive order. Transgender for everybody. So I guess it's the president's fault then, isn't it?
Friend groups showing up for treatment. Then, as the movement gained power...
Why is the corner of this video censored? It looks like a waterfall behind this blur. I have to imagine that's a channel mark. Like, does he not want people to know what channel this is from? And so he has blurred their channel watermark? What a weird thing to do.
Institutions fell in line one after another. Schools adopted new policies, often keeping parents in the dark. Medical associations rewrote their...
That parents in the dark thing, no, that's a misrepresentation of school policies that required teachers to not out children to parents who are abusive. The same way and for the same reason they were required to not out gay children to parents who were abusive in previous years. For the same reason. 40% of homeless kids are LGBT because they get kicked out of their homes by abusive parents when those parents find out they're LGBT. That's why the schools cannot forcibly out the children. Holy shit. If you're a decent parent and your child trusts you, they will tell you. If they don't tell you, it's not because the school is hiding it. It's because maybe you're not actually a very good parent. It's something to think about. I know. I realize the generation that invented participation trophies has a very hard time thinking that they themselves could possibly not be the best ever because they deserve all the trophies. Look at the guy at the White House who's collecting everyone else's trophies that he can't earn himself. Holy shit. Kelly King's here sending us a super chat for $5 saying, helping towards the goal. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that very much. We're now 40% of the way to doing a bonus show later in the week, which would be neat. So I hope we get there. All right. I got to speed this up, folks. I really want to knock down every single peg he puts up. We do not have time for all of it. So I'm going to try to go a little faster.
Guidelines, making it easier for young people to start treatments and surgery.
That's not actually true. I know I just said I'm going to try to go faster. WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, rewrote their guidelines. And while technically that is a medical association, all the other associations didn't rewrite their guidelines. They just used the WPATH guidelines.
Corporations rush to cash in on things, as they always do.
Oh, a right winger who's mad about corporations? Also, how? In what way, specifically? Those dang corporations, you know you can't trust them. If Ken LaCorte is calling them out, holy crap. Miranda sends us a super chat for $5 saying, oh no, not schools letting kids be called what they want to. How do we possibly let such horrible things happen? I know, being respectful towards each other in schools? My goodness, this is persecution of the bullies. We can't have this.
I mean, even Donald Trump, running in 2016, when pressed, said transgender people should be able to use whatever bathroom they feel is appropriate, and he had no interest in turning it into a campaign.
That's true, actually. I have a clip of that interview around somewhere, and while that may not be an exact quote, the general premise is true. He thought it was stupid to make trans people a political issue. And yet here we are. Interesting.
An issue. And the movement's demands grew larger. It wasn't enough to accept transgender individuals. You had to fully embrace their ideology or be...
Once again, change the minority out. It wasn't enough to fully accept Jewish people. We had to embrace the minority. What the fuck?
Branded transphobic. The notion that biological sex itself was a social construct became mainstream in many circles.
No. Anything that humans have come up with, any category system we have invented is by nature a social construct. To say the notion that sex is a social construct, that's not even contentious. Of course it is. Every model we've constructed, every map we've drawn, every analogy we have typed, they are constructed because we made them. What the fuck do you mean, Ken? I guess you could say there are science deniers who started saying that the known and accepted fact that the idea of sex being a binary has always been a social construct started to argue nuh-uh because it's natural, because English is the language that God used when he created the universe or something. I don't know, but sure. Kelly King, Detroit Atheist Queen 24/7, sends us a super chat for $5. Thank you, Kelly. And says, my youngest got suspended when in school because they keep saying they weren't a certain gender and they're non-binary. Well, that's some shittiness. I appreciate the super chat. I don't know if that's affirming or not, because if a person is non-binary, saying they're not a certain gender could be good. Although I take from the tone of your message that it was not. People are very, very shit. In fact, there's something of a joke among trans girls that when they were little and everyone thought they were boys, they got called girls a lot. And now that it turns out they are women, people keep saying, no, you're a man. Like it's just bully culture. It's just whatever people think will be most hurtful. And they're usually wrong. Miranda says, Jeebus wrote the U.S. Constitution in English, and that's good enough for me. It's true. It is known, you might say.
The phrase trans women are women became an unquestionable mantra. This created a...
And yet, there are gazillions of chuds on the internet who try to question it. Details.
growing divide between activists and medical.
Okay, so we've got a letter to the editor, ostensibly from Robert Galbraith under his dead name, and we've got a Twitter tweet something from an account called Women Are Women 3, which reads, your daily reminder that if trans women are women was true, the corollary mantra, women are trans women, would be equally true. It's true. Gender criticals are chronically stupid. Saying that schnauzers are dogs would have to mean that all dogs are schnauzers. Obviously, that's just how logic works, right?
Professionals. Many doctors and researchers had concerns as transition became less about treating gender dysphoria and more about affirming any claim of gender identity.
There's a couple bits of conflation here. We do not have time to go into all of them. There has been a shift away from simply alleviating gender dysphoria and moving towards gender euphoria. Believe it or not, it's possible, in fact, even encouraged in some certain circles, for people to not just not be miserable, but in fact, go a little bit further and actually, maybe, possibly, be just a little bit happy. In fact, it turns out studies show, and these you can find on my website, people who are happier experience better outcomes psychologically. I know it's a reach, but it's true. People who are less sad and indeed more happy have better psychological outcomes. Weird, right? Humans are so crazy.
But it was becoming harder to resist. Two competing narratives emerged. Activists insisted these transgender youth were always there. They were just finally free to be themselves. Critics, pointing to the unprecedented...
We need showing the book. Critics. To his credit, he does say, activists say that trans people were always there. We're just finally able to be ourselves. We have the language to express what's going on with us. Yes, that is what we say. That is an accurate statement.
And its speed of the change and the complete reversal in gender ratios, they saw evidence of a social contagion. But that
They who? It's Abigail Schreier using the Lisa Littman debunked and retracted, highly biased study. Yes, they are wrong. They're extremely wrong. But they have a conspiracy theory and they need to sell those books. Sinister Porpoise sending us a super chat for $2.56. Sorry for telling you about this Distelfink. Did you tell me about this guy? You may have. Porpoise has been telling me about a few Distelfinks, as it were, recently. Actually, I do have to say, I'm glad. I originally set up this episode in February. Life has been lifey. Things have been bad. My pain levels are out of fucking control, and I honestly don't know how much longer I can do this. And there's other problems besides. Various things have happened that kept making me postpone and postpone and postpone. And today I was having a lot of depression and executive dysfunction. And I couldn't seem to get anything fucking done. So I took a few minutes and I unplugged and I tried to get some medical things taken care of. And I started to get angry. And then, because my computer, okay, tangents, I know. TLDR, this dude came back into my awareness. I was moving some files around to try to resuscitate my poor computer, which was trying to die on me again. And this dude was bloop right there. And I'm like, I can be angry enough to go after this guy today. Let's do that. The episode is already prepped. The video is already loaded, right? I just have to move it to public and set it up for today. That's it. I can do this. And so that's why we're doing it. We're doing it now. So thank you for joining us.
The perfect storm had gathered strong and the movement seemed unstoppable.
The movement was unstoppable. What movement? What was the goal of this unstoppability? I don't need permission to exist. Protect trans youth and federal protections now. Oh no! people being allowed to like live in peace even. The horror. We must stop this unstoppable movement. We can't have youth protected. Oh no. How will the Republicans find new child brides if we protect the children?
But as history shows time and time again, rapid gains in political power often lead to overreach. And that's
this is vague enough that I can say that it's true. Rapid gains in political power often, what does often mean? Often lead to overreach. Okay, but what does that mean though? It's so vague. What does it mean though?
exactly what happened next. Hey, real quick, if I make any substantive mistake in this video, let me know and I'll address it in a pinned comment below. Okay.
I'm missing stuff. It's a live broadcast and we're on a timer. If I miss something substantive, let me know in the comments below. Maybe I'll do something about it if I'm still alive that long. We'll see. Deconstructing Laura sends a super chat for $4.99. Thank you so much. And says, during my deepest depression, I find that anger is the most helpful emotion because at least it gives me energy. Yes. I've been struggling with depression for a very fucking long time. And one of the things I learned early on is that anger is the most useful emotion in cutting through numbness. Because when I say depression, I don't just mean sadness. I mean numbness. Your emotions just mute or even turn off completely. But anger comes from a different place than most of the other emotions. But once you cut through the numbness and you can start feeling things again, then you can use that energy. You can start trying to shift your perspective and you can change that anger into other feelings. It's weird and we don't have time to go into the whole thing, but it is useful because at least you can move and do things instead of just lying on a bathroom floor, for example. But yes, thank you.
So when a movement gains power quickly, overreach almost always follows. What started as a push for basic rights and dignity morphed into something more.
It started as a push for basic rights and dignity. And the right said, fuck you, this is America. We don't do rights or dignity here, bitches.
More extreme. And the pushback was going.
It morphed into something more extreme. Like what? What exactly is the problem, Ken? We're still asking for basic rights and dignity. Which do you have a problem with? Please do tell.
To be inevitable. Here's where the movement began to erode public support and turned allies into skeptics. The first.
Allies into skeptics. I don't think those are on the same spectrum slider thing. Like, most of my allies are skeptics. Now, if you mean conspiracy theorists, that's actually the opposite of skepticism. That's increased gullibility. People who buy into conspiracy theories have to be gullible, you know?
Was their use of censorship.
Yes, the trans people who control everything are using the government to censor all the things. It's the trans people who are banning all the trans inclusive books from the libraries. It's the trans people trying to ban the freaking stripper shows in schools that aren't even happening. It's the trans people with a list of words 1,000,000 long that you can't use in federal government documents. Obviously, we control everything, so we have the power of censorship. That's how that works. Yep.
What began as respect turned into forced compliance. It was less about acceptance and more about enforcement. Dissent wasn't just discouraged, it was silenced. Criticism of any kind.
So this is that bad faith conflation we get. where when a person walks into a room and punches you in the face and other people say, you got to get out because you punched that person in the face, they go, oh, you're canceling me because I have a right to express myself and you're saying I can't do that. You punched someone in the face, my guy. That goes beyond your rights. That's an actual crime. Granted, these fucknuts are doing that in chat rooms, but here's the thing. In most parts of the US, verbal assault is still assault, and doing it in written form doesn't change that fact. So walking into a room and assaulting someone is still assault. This is, you don't have to be a dick. You know, you can walk into a room and say, I have questions about what it means to be trans, or I don't think this ideology is founded because I don't really understand. Whatever. You can ask questions. You can disagree. But when you start hurting people, you cross a line. And if you kick the Nazis out of the bar, you're not censoring Nazi-ness. They've crossed a line. They don't belong there. You know? Holy shit. Miranda sends us a super chat for $5. Thank you, Miranda. And says, we love you, Ember. Thank you. I appreciate you guys very, very much. Especially Miranda. You've done so much to help me this past winter. You're gonna, oh my goodness. Folks, Miranda's amazing. I've mentioned it many, many times. But like the fact I have a heater right now, I did not freeze to death this winter. And she made me this scarf, this delightful scarf. It's a keyhole. I forget the full name of it. I'm so bad at things, but like it's lovely and delightful. And I appreciate it very, very much. I appreciate all of you folks who keep coming here for some reason. It means a lot to me. Sinister says, so apparently Ember is now so popular that YouTube thinks I want to see people mocking her on my feed. Yeah. Jester says, really mean of you trans people to erase trans people. I know. We're deleting ourselves, I guess. And that hence the premise of the episode. Trans people deleted. Yikes.
And even mild or well-meaning, it became transphobia, and those who voiced it got slammed.
Oh, I see. The mild and well-meaning became transphobia. Such as what? Show us an example. He's just saying things, and now his love of not providing citations is really doing some heavy lifting. What do you mean, mild? Like, again, with the bullies, they walk into a room and they start harassing people, and they go, oh, why am I being canceled or blocked or whatever? Just because I'm abusing people. I was very mild and well-meaning. No, fuck off.
Media platforms became ground zero. As the transgender movement gained traction, those platforms implemented policies aimed at curbing what they called hate speech.
So the platforms, not the government, not the trans people, not the activists, the platforms adopted rules saying hate speech against minority groups of all kinds is not allowed on our platform. You can go do hate speech, just not in our house. That's not censorship, buddy. Censorship is when political governmental power is used to silence you. A private platform making its own terms of service, that's their right. It's their platform.
Or misgendering or dead naming. In practice, this meant punishing users for sometimes stating basic biological facts.
And oh, he's so confused. This is another one of those Mott and Bailey kind of things. Like when you go in and start harassing someone by misgendering them and dead naming them and so forth, and then you just say, oh, I'm just stating basic biological facts. No, you're not. You're intentionally trying to be hurtful, and because you're a fucking coward, you're hiding behind excuses of science and reality. But that's not actually true, because here's a fun thing about basic biology. There's advanced biology. There's more biology beyond that. And if you understood sex, first of all, transgender, we're talking about gender. But even if you want to talk about just sex, there's a lot more to it. I've done a few shows recently about different species with different situations. There's a fish with 3 sexes. There's a bird with 4 sexes. What the fuck is going on with bees, right? Like, if you go with this gametes only argument that they've been loving lately, then what the fuck are the worker bees? You know, the drones are male, the queen is female, based on the reproductive cells they produce. What are the workers? They don't produce any. So what up? For example. So yeah, there's a lot more than just the basics. And trying to hide a deliberate attempt to hurt someone behind flimsy excuses of, I don't really understand science, I'm just trying to be hurtful, and I'm too afraid to say so, does not carry water.
Or expressing concerns about the movement's successes. Women were banned from Twitter for referring to biological males as a he. Academics who questioned gender identity lost position.
We almost have a citation here. Professor allegedly fired for transgender views wins appeal. Like, we don't know who it is. We don't know what it means. Why is it only a headline? It's so close to a citation, but we don't even know what the professor, like, was the professor pro-trans trying to teach at a Christian school? We don't know. What the fuck is this supposed to show us? Miranda says the workers are NBs. I love it. I think I may have to tell that to my oldest, who's a non-binary science bean, and may appreciate that. In fact, one of my good friends, IRL, is also a non-binary person who is a huge fan of bees. They might like that one too.
Even comedians found their jokes subject to the language police. Take Megan.
Yes, no one is more canceled than Dave Chappelle, who got like 3 more comedy specials after that one.
Murphy, a Canadian feminist banned from Twitter for tweeting, "Men aren't women." Her account.
In fairness, that's true. In the same way that trans women aren't men, because they're women. Technically correct is the best kind of correct, but I suspect that's not the tweet she was banned for.
Account was permanently suspended, at least until Elon came along, in a legal battle that set precedent for silencing even factual, biologically grounded statements. Harry Potter.
But that's not censorship. First of all, it's not factual, and it's not actually biologically grounded. It's just hate speech masquerading as, I'm just asking questions, or I'm just stating facts. Why would you do that, though? Like, for example, I could state the fact that Ken is bald. I could even say that he looks like the ultimate tool, as you may recall from earlier in the episode. That's just facts. But why would I do that except to be hurtful? Now, I'm not even attacking his humanity or his personhood. I'm just pointing out that I could just say some facts, but the only reason to do that is to try to hurt his feelings. If I do it based on a characteristic about him, like the fact that he's white, then it could be hate speech. Possibly. This is very simple stuff. The people who talk about basic biology haven't taken basic civics, it seems. It's very strange.
Potter author J.K. Rowling, who criticized gender ideology while affirming trans rights, became the
criticized gender ideology. It should be noted, gender ideology is a right-wing buzzword. It is literally a term used by and for nationalist Christians, the Nazis. People who use that term are Nazis. every single time. That is not a thing. It's a way to transform people into an ism, an ideology. It's a mechanism of dehumanization so that when they start rounding us up and throwing us in gas chambers, it's not people who are being disposed of, just garbage ideology.
The target of widespread boycotts, death threats, and being labeled a bigot. These weren't just...
It's interesting how he doesn't mention her intentional funding of anti-trans legal efforts or her promise to devote a large portion of her profits from future sales of her various products and merchandises towards anti-trans legal efforts. She is using her fortune to intentionally hurt trans people. But all she did was state a biological fact. No, that's dishonest, Ken, and you know it.
Fringe cases. They reflected the movement's broader intolerance for dissent. And so
it's us being intolerant. My goodness, if we had a bingo card, we'd black it out on that one. Though this is another one of those Darvo things. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. It's the people Ken and his friends are going after and trying their level best to hurt that are taking away their rights.
Censorship went beyond individuals. Social media algorithms began suppressing certain content, making sure that alternative viewpoints wouldn't reach a broader audience.
Again, that's a decision by corporations, which, according to Republicans and the U.S. Supreme Court, have a right to free speech. It's their platform. They make the rules. Suck it up, Buttercup. That's not trans people doing that. But also, yes, there's a lot of things that aren't related to trans people. Like YouTube, for example, in 2020 got into a lot of trouble for pushing flat earth conspiracy theories at people in their algorithm. They got called into Congress for it. They promised to make changes to the algorithm to start suppressing misinformation, malinformation, disinformation of all kinds. And plot twist, the anti-trans conspiracy theory bullshit got caught up in that because it's also a conspiracy theory.
Platforms like YouTube demonetize creators who discuss transitioners or raise concerns about medical intervention on minors.
Interesting. So he just said YouTube has deprioritized conspiracy theories and demonetized creators who discussed detransitioners or raised concerns about medical interventions on minors. You know what else they demonetized? People who raised concerns about medical vaccinations of minors for the same reason, because there's not actually any information behind it, and spreading medical misinformation is very harmful.
Reddit banned entire communities. Academia and medicine.
Still not trans people doing the thing. What's your problem, my guy? If you don't like corporations, maybe you should consider becoming a leftist.
Weren't immune either. Researchers who cautioned against fast-tracking transitions for minors faced career-ending repercussions. Dr. Lisa Lippman
Lisa Lippman is the person who conducted the intentionally biased, flawed study that got retracted that was the basis for Abigail Schreier's book, which we mentioned earlier. At least we're getting a reference now. At least he's citing something now. Holy shit. Kelly King, Detroit Atheist Queen, sent us a $5 super chat. Thank you, Kelly. And says, almost there. And it's true. We are now 90% of the way to our goal. We're so close. We may well do a bonus show this week. We'll see. All right. Yeah. Again, he's throwing out way too much bullshit for me to possibly get all of it. I'm doing my best, but we have to move along.
Who published a study on rapid onset gender dysphoria, a phenomenon suggesting social contagion among teens, was vilified and their work discredited by activists, despite being grounded in some solid empirical research.
Now, remember when I said at some points he was going to paint himself in a corner and end up just outright lying? Lisa Littman's study was not despite being grounded in some solid empirical research. Once again, she did her study by sending a survey to parents of trans kids, and she specifically selected for anti-trans parents. The only social media groups she recruited from were anti-trans parent groups. That's not solid empirical research. That's extremely biased sample selection. And that's why it wasn't activists, but real researchers who called out the journal PLOS ONE for publishing this bullshit. It was first edited and then pulled entirely. So him saying it's solid evidence, solid science, solid empirical proof, no, it's just not. That is just a lie.
Mass media played its role too. By presenting one-sided narratives, outlets often...
This man, girl, fam, bestie, you are complaining about one-sided narratives. Holy shit. I think my irony meter just exploded.
Framed any opposition as bigotry. Critics weren't debating, they were...
He's talking about things being canceled, but he just showed this article, credit for giving us an actual citation of something, but it says the opposite of what he says it says. This is an NBC News article saying that Amazon will not remove a book advocates say endangers trans youth. Irreversible Damage. It's about Abigail Schreier's book based on Lisa Littman's fake study. Amazon is saying they will not remove that book. What the fuck are you talking about, Ken? You're showing us evidence of people not being canceled. What?
Bigotry. Critics weren't debating, they were portrayed as enemies of progress. The result was an environment where one side of the debate could dominate unchecked, and they dominated.
Yes, the trans people dominated the debate because we were debating. I can't even with this guy. The dishonesty is just, if he has to be wearing a kilt, because if he were wearing pants, they would be on fire.
And it also made genuine concerns taboo to say.
Genuine concerns. Like, you know, I'm genuinely concerned about the Jewish question or the problem of the blacks. It's never genuine. It's not concern. It's just cowardice. It's saying, I want to bully people, but I'm afraid people will think badly of me for doing it.
And the two biggest concerns people had were related to kids and women's spaces.
Weird, right? Once again, change it out for any other minority group. It's the same issue every time. It's they're coming for our kids. We have to protect the children. We have to protect the women. That was the argument against allowing lesbians into women's spaces. We have to protect the women and the children from being indoctrinated or being sexually assaulted by the other women. That was the argument against allowing black women into white women's spaces. We have to protect the children and we have to protect the white women from being assaulted by the other women. It's always the same argument, no matter the minority, and it's always to distract you from the people who are actually a threat to the women and children, which across all of history has always been the fucking ultra-rich, waspy folks. Always. Fuck. Sapphire sends a super chat for $5. Saying more Ember. And that puts us over the top for a goal. Hooray! We've done the thing. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna toot my horn. I'll set up a bonus show for later. I'm not sure exactly when yet. I didn't actually think we'd reach the goal because we haven't reached a goal in a long time. Thank you all so much. I very much appreciate it. And I'm looking forward. I mentioned earlier, Luxander does these streams, these just chatting streams, and I really like those. I like to hang out in Lux's stream. The vibes are nice. And so I thought it would be nice to do one of those. But it helps if people come to them, you know? So we'll give it a try. I'm looking forward to it. It should be neat. And thank you. All right, I don't know if we're going to finish this, folks. My goodness, we're going longer than I had planned to in the first place. Oh. All right, well, we'll see what happens.
The movement's focus on children became its most contentious.
The movement's focus on children. Meanwhile, he's showing a video from Libs of TikTok. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a watermark from Libs of TikTok right in the middle of the thing. Chai Rychek is focused on children, interestingly enough.
Battleground early on. For many, this wasn't just about respect or inclusion. It felt like an attack on child.
Why are we talking about drag people? Like we showed a drag queen. Now we're talking about the art of drag. Cool. Drag is amazing. Drag is a wonderful art form. But what the fuck does that have to do with trans people? Is Ken confusing trans with the entire LGBT again? I think he might be.
Childhood innocence. From explicit materials in schools to controversial medical.
What do we mean by explicit? Are we talking about sex ed programs where they talk about explicit body parts? Are we talking about literature? You know, they used to ban literature that explicitly talked about race issues too. You know, like Huckleberry Finn. Yeah, Mark Twain was a banned book because it was too explicitly racial.
Medical treatments. Activists pushed boundaries that left even moderate supporters questioning their methods. One flashpoint was
even moderate supporters.
was graphic, sexualized material in children's libraries. When parents...
Oh no, we're showing children their correct anatomical body parts and what they're called. Whatever shall we do? If the children know their private parts are supposed to be private, the priests will be out of business. The pastors will have nothing to do but actually help the poor or something. Oh no!
Rejected, they were labeled as bigots or censors themselves. But
what? People who are censoring other people, like trying to get books banned from schools? They were being called censors just for censorship? Surely you jest. Oh goodness. Sinister Porpoise said the super chat for 512. Thank you, Sinister. And says the best thing about being a teacher in a red state is that you have an entire Congress full of people who tell you how to do your job. I'm sure it makes things simpler. Oh wow. Thank you, Sinister. My goodness.
Most people agree with the concept of age-appropriate material for kids. Then
right. First of all, education should not be determined based on what most people agree with. But never mind that. It's true. Most people do agree with age-appropriate material for kids. What's the problem?
Came Drag Queen Story Hour that exploded across the country. And
again, that's drag. What are we talking about? Is this about trans people, or are we talking about drag? Is Ken unaware that trans people and drag are not the same thing? Or does he just hope his viewers aren't aware? Is he stupid, or does he think you are? Either way, this is not exactly top shelf stuff.
Drag events billed as inclusive, family-friendly entertainment. But on social media, videos came out showing men in drag.
Oh, look, it's Libs of TikTok again.
gyrating on kids, or family shows where people were singing about eating dicks.
Wait a second. That person who was being danced on, that's an AFAB person. What are we doing?
Eating dicks.
Okay, so you don't like people doing performances at public festivals that include controversial language? It sounds like you may be a censor, Ken. You're trying to censor people. I don't know. Maybe Ken just likes to look at this footage. I don't know what the fuck it has to do with anything, but okay.
Accounts like Libs of TikTok posted over-the-top material every day. And schools didn't just
over-the-top material. We're seeing TikToks of people existing, like their faces. What? Like this person, the text on his video reads, "Y'all really want to try to say there aren't trans kids? What's the problem? What is the issue here?"
host events, but integrated activism deep in their curriculum.
Oh no, the schools are saying we should have equality for all students and be respectful of each other. How are we ever going to get Black people out of public schools if the schools keep teaching equality for all? Oh my goodness. How is poor Ken supposed to be a racist when he can't even hate on trans people without being canceled? My goodness. It's so hard.
Some districts kept parents in the dark about their kids' gender identity at school, and teachers were trained to affirm any child questioning their gender.
Right, it's not the teacher's job. That's a thing for like psychologists and doctors and such. It's not a teacher's job. If a child comes up and says, "Hey, I would prefer you call me Billy," okay. It doesn't matter for the purposes of the class. It's not the teacher's job.
Without telling their parents.
Amber Levine of Newcastle is suing the school. Last December, Levine said she found a chest binder used to flatten someone's breasts in her 13-year-old child's room. Levine says the school either provided it or helped obtain it.
And maybe,
I mean, at least we got a name this time, but there's, if so, so what? Schools often help children acquire clothing that they may be lacking. What's the problem? The school gave my kid a coat. They stayed warm. Oh no.
these people were just having a good time with their chants, but it wasn't funny to a lot of other people. The medical side was even more.
The fuck was that? It looked like a pride parade. What's the what?
More polarizing. Between 2017 and 21, nearly 18,000 minors in the US started puberty blockers or hormone treatments.
Started puberty blockers or hormone therapy. Now, bearing in mind that statistically speaking, there's something like 1 million to 1.5 million trans kids in the US. 18,000 in that, what was it, 7-year span, got their hands on puberty blockers or HRT. Not both. Are we counting them each per year? Is it total? Like what? So 0.014% of the trans kids were able to obtain medical care that they need. Oh, I wonder, just for shits and giggles, I'm going to Google how many kids have chemo per year. Wow. According to the Children's Cancer Foundation, approximately 40,000 children and adolescents are treated for cancer each year by chemotherapy. So more than twice as many kids as obtain this kind of healthcare obtain this other kind of healthcare. Oh my God, it must be an epidemic of kids obtaining healthcare to, like, you know, make their lives suck less and possibly even not die. Surely we must put a stop to it.
And the numbers were rising each year. These drugs, often creating irreversible changes, carried significant risks. Yet they were given to children as young as 10. And by 2021, over...
Now, that's another case of misleading language. It's true that there have been like 1 or 2 cases of kids as young as 10 getting puberty blockers. They're usually cis kids because puberty blockers were invented for cis kids who start puberty too early. That's why they're puberty blockers. They block the puberty. Because early puberty, precocious puberty, as it's called, can fuck up your childhood. That's why they're there. You have to start puberty to get a puberty blocker.
5,700 minors underwent surgeries like double mastectomy.
Over 5,700 minors. Now, is this just in 2021? Because there's no citation provided. It's just another thing gets declared. But is it for that year, or is it for the previous 10 years, or what are we talking about? And also, 5,700 minors. Does that include the AMAB kids getting their gynecomastia removed because the double mastectomy was necessary to better align their bodies with their gender identities? Because once again, 97% of top surgeries are cis boys getting gynecomastia surgeries. That's on my website too, betterthanember.com.
To align with their gender identities. Proponents argued these interventions save lives by preventing suicides, but the evidence on that was...
He's going to say the evidence is shaky. That's not true. We have fuck tons of studies, extensive studies that are grounded in empirical data, also on the website, betterthanember.com, in the gender size section. But also, that is a legitimate criticism to say people claim it prevents suicides, because it shouldn't have to come to that, saying people are suffering and we can make things better for them by giving them the health care that reduces that suffering. That should be enough. It shouldn't have to go so far as to, well, many of them will die. That's true, but it shouldn't have to go that far, saying we have, people with broken bones. We can, set their bones. We can give them health care. Some of them will die from bone shards circulating in their system and causing blood clots. That's not emotional blackmail. That's a warning. But even those who wouldn't die, we can make their life suck less by setting the bone and giving them painkillers. Why would we not? Does only death matter? Holy shit.
Pretty shaky. Many critics pointed out that mental health conditions like anxiety and depressions often went untreated in favor of rushing into gender transition.
Rushing into gender transition. All right, so this whole thing, this is another one of those long topics that I told you we were going to have to breeze past, because it requires way more detail than we have time for. When you are suffering from gender dysphoria, you are going to experience other things like depression or like anxiety, because when you go to school or work or whatever and people incessantly misgender you and try to hurt you and try to bully you and try to abuse you and sometimes fucking attack you with knives or worse, you're going to develop anxiety. It's not that the other conditions aren't being addressed. It's that those other conditions can't even begin to be addressed while the gender dysphoria is in play. Duh.
And these excesses didn't alienate just conservatives, but many of the movement's original supporters. And if targeting kids was one misstep, The
Targeting kids. That's a funny way to say giving healthcare to children who need that healthcare. There's no targeting kid. What the fuck do you mean? But also women's rights. Here's the other fork of it. Protect children, protect women. Except for the women that he doesn't like. Once again, change it out for any other minority group you want. Well, you know, these people who think black women should have rights don't care about the white women's rights who don't want the black people there. Yes, no one cares about the racist assholes because they're racist assholes. Their opinions do not count. Fuck them. Same thing here. No one cares about the transphobic bigots or the whatever you want to call them. No one cares for the same reason.
transgender movement's collision with women's rights was the other. Despite what some
Now, isn't it interesting that they're, on the one hand, Ken makes a big deal over how so many young girls are being transitioned into boys, but also there's an epidemic of invading trans women taking over everything for women. The double standard, it's amazing. We're going both directions at once. I love it. Now let's find out what could he possibly have to say about Leah Thomas.
activists claim, it's abundantly clear that in any activity that requires strength and speed, men just have a massive advantage over women.
Men have a massive advantage over women in sport. First of all, no, it's not just clear. We've seen studies, we've seen examples. In certain circumstances, women have the advantage statistically, but also statistics don't apply to individuals. That's why there are cases of women dominating in the boys wrestling league, like Audrey Jimenez, referenced on my website, or the Scottish grandmother who dominated a co-ed ultra marathon a couple of years ago, also referenced on my website, and a bunch of other cases where women beat men. There's Patricio Manuel, which I probably mispronounced his name. My apologies. I'm American. I can't pronounce things. Also referenced on the website, who went 3-0 against cis male boxers. If trans men are AFAB and therefore inferior and unable to ever beat any man ever, how did he do that? It's almost like it's all bullshit. But also, you can't make this argument without also sneaking in the assertion that trans women are men, which is not true on any fucking level, including every single sports medicine study we've done. All of them. All of them. Also referenced on the website. Fuck.
I'm not even going to go through those statistics. Leah Thomas was one early example. He was a mediocre male swimmer who, after transitioning, dominated women's competition.
Dominated women's competitions. We just showed the photo. First of all, yes, the misgendering, because Ken's an asshole. He's doing what they call a dog whistle, except it's not really subtle. Normally, a dog whistle is something that the people who aren't the people you're reaching out to can't tell you're doing, but virtue signaling. That's what he's doing. It's reverse virtue signaling. He's just hauling the red flags up to show all the other home slices that he also is made of red flags. He is a hate monger. Cool. Good job. But also, dominating, the picture he showed was when Leah tied for 5th place, which means she lost to 4 cis girls. Dominating, though. Okay.
Thomas went from ranking 462nd as a male to breaking women's records and winning NCAA champion.
Winning champion. All right. Leah Thomas holds 0 NCAA records. None. What do you mean? But also, she lost to 4 other cis women in her famous race. What do you mean? And also, if you care to dig up the sports statistics and whatnot, that abysmal ranking that Ken just quoted, that was her final year on the boys' team after she'd been on estrogen for 2 years. She was already a trans woman, still on the boys' team because she wasn't ready to switch over yet. Yeah. Estrogen will do that to you. Ask me how I know.
Here at the end of this race, Thomas starting to pull away.
Female.
Oh, and now we're going to show Riley. After the race where they tied for 5th place down to the hundredths of a second, now we're going to talk about the poor woman who, if Leah hadn't been in the race, would still have come in 5th.
Athletes who trained their entire lives suddenly found themselves losing races, scholarships, and opportunities.
She's losing again. If Leah hadn't even been there, she still would have come in 5th. It was a tie. She didn't even move down a place because of it. Holy shit. But also, if you want to talk about protecting women or protecting women's sports, what about Leah's coach? Or not Leah's coach, Riley's coach. Riley spent so much time talking about the horror of having to have a competition that Leah Thomas was involved in. She never talks about the fact that her coach was assaulting her teammates. There was a predator in that locker room who was attacking the girls. It was Riley's coach, and she's never said a fucking word about it. But yeah, this is totally to protect women.
Opportunities. A recent UN study showed that more than 600 biological female athletes.
This is a whole other thing. I've mentioned it before. The 900 medals thing, that's not a UN study. That is a claim made by a hate group called WLF. And they're part of there's a lot of background. Again, we don't have time to go into everything. On the website, you'll find a link for the Southern Poverty Law Center's Transgender Pseudoscience Network. I think it's called something like that. And it shows how all of these hate groups are linked together. They share staff, they share funding, they share resources, and they're all funded by the Heritage Foundation to push the far right anti-autonomy agenda. Their ultimate goal isn't just to fuck over trans people, it's to institute a world where women's bodies are the property of the state. But by all means, let's talk about this dishonest report and how it was a UN study, even though it wasn't.
Lost over 890 medals to transgendered opponents in 29 different sports. Others suffered injuries competing against biologically stronger opponents.
That blurry footage was I don't know the names of the athletes because sports ball is just not my jam. I know a few specific facts that keep coming up time and time again, but it's not my thing. Ask Carly Charday Webb if you want to know details about sports stuff. She's all over it. But that is one that does come up from time to time. It was a girl who took a spiked volleyball to the face and apparently was injured from it, from a volleyball that she took directly in her face. Okay.
These weren't theoretical concerns. They were happening on tracks and in pools and on playing fields across the world. The problems went beyond competitions. A Vermont
and dartboards and chess tables and video games. Yes. How unfair.
High school banned its entire girls volleyball team from their locker rooms. Their crime?
Yeah, there's entire states that have banned an entire school from competing because there's one student who might be trans.
It was objecting to a biological man changing with them.
What is a biological man, Ken? As opposed to an artificial man? Again, we don't have time to delve all the way into that subject. I have to just pass it by, but I want to point at it as we go past.
Prisons became another flashpoint. Male inmates began declaring themselves transgender, then being sent to female facilities. Some people called that a government-sanctioned rape.
Some people, but also as opposed to the guards who are actually raping the female inmates, or the way guards will put trans women in cells with cis men to be raped. What do we mean, Ken?
California, a third of the biological men seeking to be housed with women had been convicted of a sex crime.
Biological men. Again, what do you mean? Are you talking about trans women and you're just being a dick, or are you talking about something else? But also, worth noting, many trans people in prison for sex crimes are sex workers, because that's still illegal in a whole lot of places, and yet trans people often can't get regular jobs. Ask me how I fucking know.
In Wisconsin, it was over half. To many, the pattern became clear. Women's rights, hard won over decades, were being sacrificed on the altar of gender ideology.
Again, with the gender ideology thing. Reminder, right-wing term, not a real term, but also we're people, not ideologies. But also, fuck. This is why so many transphobes wave the flag of second wave feminism, because they can't get on board with third wave because that lets lesbians and brown people into the bathroom. But they base this rejection of trans women on the second wave feminism. It's nonsense. I mean, the whole thing is nonsense. You know this by now if you've been watching for more than 5 minutes, but holy shit.
Spaces once reserved for biological females, from locker rooms to prison cells, no longer offered protection.
Protection against what? Other women coming in? Once again, swap the minorities. They're letting Jewish women into the women's room. They're letting black women into the women's room. Hell, they're letting tall women into the women's room. Oh no. But is that a threat? What do you need protection from? Because we still have cis men just barging in. Here's the thing that you may have seen floating around the social medias. In a culture where absolutely nothing is stopping cis men from raping women whenever the fuck they want and facing no consequences for it, why do they even need to bother to attempt to pretend to be trans? But also, it is a supremely shitty take to say that the rights of one group of people should be held hostage because a different group of people might abuse someone else. Is this America? Because this is sounding like some serious bullshit. Alrighty, folks, we are near the 2-hour mark. We're not quite finished, but I think you get the general idea. And my blood pressure is spiking, so, you know, let's call it here for today. We are going to do a bonus show. Well, the specific bonus show, I promise. There may be other bonus shows this week too, but we will do a Let's Chat stream sometime this week. It'll be fun. That's going to do it for this time. Thank you for hitting the like, the subscribe, the share. They're all free. They're all very, very helpful. Post these things everywhere, not just this episode, but the other episode. Put them on the socials, put them on the Twitters, put them on the Facebooks. Let the haters hate, but help us reach the people who could benefit from this kind of information. If you want to directly support what I'm doing here, there are a bunch of ways to do that. From super chats like we've gotten tonight. Thank you all so much for so many super chats. Super thanks if you're watching later. Or you can go through the website, betterthanember.com, which offers one-time options as well as monthly support. And of course, the new and improved Space Pride flags. Ta-da! Which are now on their own website at astralpride.com. Get yours while I'm still alive to make them. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, try not to die. Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for February. Miranda, Karen Butcher, Jimmy Tux, Ian Chen, Maya Adkison, Jessica the Trans Metal Alchemist, Robin Webster, Lilith, Ember Lynn, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Lil of All Trades, Deviant Outcast, Secular Feelinist, Kelly King, the Detroit Atheist Queen, Geo Sam, Thriver Scapegoat, The Godless Engineer, Why? Because Weed Bro, Katie Bluebird, and Fro from Norway. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember or by joining Emberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which also includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, member-only live streams, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.